All right, now we're going to get to my favorite little story of the entire Mexican American War, and that is this whole Polk Santa Anna deal. So basically, after the Texas Revolution and throughout the early 1840s, everyone in Mexico started hating the military dictator Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, who should be familiar because if you recall, that's the guy who was in charge when the Texans didn't really like Mexico controlling them and trying to make them Catholics and trying to make them get rid of their slaves. So they said, you know what, forget it. Let's just rebel and steal Texas. So that's what we did. And this is the guy, if you also remember, instead of making some sort of deal with Sam Houston at the end of the Texas Revolution, when he got captured at the last battle of San Jacinto, he basically said, you know what, let me go free and get back to Mexico with my life, and I'll give you all of Texas. So you can imagine the Mexicans not too thrilled with him. So eventually, December 1844, the Mexicans are able to successfully overthrow Santa Anna, and he is then forced to go into exile, which is basically like hiding in Cuba. Then 2 years later, when war breaks out, Santa Anna reaches out to U.S. President James K. Polk, and they start having a little conversation together. And this is my favorite part. Basically, Santa Anna told Polk, yo, get me back into power, and as soon as I am back in charge of Mexico, I will end this war between our countries, and I'll give you a really sweet deal to get some of the land that you guys want. And of course, Santa Anna being Santa Anna, you can see this last bullet point here. As soon as Santa Anna got back in control, he said, hey, Polk, remember that deal we had? Yeah, right. I'm going to go ahead and take my army and I'm going to go right at the Americans. Santa Anna truly believed that with him in charge, the Mexicans would be able to kick the Americans back out of Mexico and defend their territory. So let's see what happens to this double crosser. So, first big battle, Santa Anna's in charge, the Battle of Buena Vista. This occurs February 22nd, 1847. And you could see Santa Anna had 15,000 men. Americans had only 5,000. So for every one American, there are three Mexican soldiers there. So you are outnumbered 3-1 if you're the Americans. Not looking too good. But luckily, our U.S. General Zachary Taylor, he outsmarted Santa Anna. He put his artillery and cannons in really, really good positions, and Santa Anna marched waves and waves of troops at them, and the American military was able to use cannon 3 and 6 8-pounder cannons at them. And if you guys remember when I showed you the grape shots with those are like the basically you turn the can to a giant shotgun where it shoots out those little pellets, and they just absolutely decimate the American forces with that. And you can see down at the bottom there for casualties, Americans lose 270 men, plus they have another 390 wounded, so about 660 casualties. The Mexicans, on the other hand, you can see they lost 600 guys with another 1,000 wounded and another 2,000 missing. Um, I'm assuming that most of them ran away because they're like, yo, I can't believe Santa Anna is in charge again. I hate this dude. And he also is a terrible general because here he is getting his butt kicked, even though he was outnumbering the Americans 3-1. So, Battle of Buena Vista is definitely the biggest battle of the Mexican American War that we've looked at thus far, and a huge, huge upset for the Americans. So, they're going to keep this winning streak and keep rolling forward. But we have a new general who's going to step in, this big fat guy that we'll look at again in the future, General Winfield Scott. So you can see he leaves from New Orleans. He has 10,000 troops, and they all board Navy ships and sail down, have a small little skirmish in Palo Alto, and then they come down, refuel down here at this city, and then eventually they land on the eastern shores, and the goal is to get to Mexico City, the capital of Mexico right there. So when they show up on those shores, they start bombing Veracruz like crazy, and then eventually Veracruz surrenders, and the Americans then use that as their launching point because now General Scott's going to take his 10,000 troops and march straight to Mexico City and capture it. And that's what we're going to look at next.